Oh, the rebellion against the Empire?
Perhaps you referred to the imminent attack on your rebel fleet.
Where is the rebel base?
I didn't know there was anyone willing to stand up against the Empire.
Hello and welcome to Rebels Reaction. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
On this episode, we react to Secret Cargo. Christine, your initial reaction in one word.
Momentous.
Momentous. Mine is culmination.
Oh.
Well, I don't know if that's the best word for my reaction. Crossover. That's probably a better word. I'll go with crossover.
Okay.
And not crossing over a basketball, breaking ankles. Crossover between storylines.
Oh, okay.
So why do you say momentous?
This episode is essentially actually, the official start of the Rebel Alliance. That's a pretty dang big deal.
Or at least a call to it.
Yeah, well, it's the day that they officially launch the Alliance, according to Mon Mothma.
Yes, that's true, yes. We can take her for a word there.
Yes. The episode didn't feel... Well, I guess it was intense, but it didn't feel super intense to me.
Not compared to the last couple.
Yeah, I guess.
Especially the
Yeah.
last one. Through Imperial Eyes is
Very
edge of your seat.
Yeah. But it was a big deal for the big storyline.
Yeah, and I think that's where my reaction comes in. We're starting to see more of that crossover. We saw in Rogue One elements of Rebels show up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't... We didn't really know how they got there.
Yeah.
And with this episode, we see Ghost Squadron, we see John Vander, we see Mon Mothma,
Yeah.
and I mean, we also see Bail Organa, and by the end of the episode, lots of familiar ships.
Yeah. And lots of familiar faces from previous Rebel episodes and just Alliance as a whole.
Yeah, so it's the crossover between different stories that we've heard, whether it's been Rebels, but more so Rogue One, A New Hope. Those are things that I get excited about seeing in Rebels and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the awesome things about the story group, and how there's now a group of people guiding the story of Star Wars overall.
Yeah.
And I don't...
Makes it more cohesive.
Yes. And I'll be the first to admit it, I really am not well versed in the EU.
So
I think
it could be cohesive.
It could, from what I've heard, it's not as cohesive as what we're beginning to see with this new canon.
Yeah.
And it's really making the story fun.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming more and more intertwined.
Yeah.
Just finished up listening to the last Aftermath book.
Don't give the end away. I'm not the end yet.
I won't say anything
Okay,
other than it's between the books, the comics, the movies, the TV shows. There are elements that we get across the board that tie in with one another, and it's fun to see how those stories become a part of each other.
Yeah.
And I think this episode was one of the stronger ones of that within Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's jump into the big three.
All right.
And kind of recap the episode real quick, and then we can kind of dive into detail as the story goes along.
Okay.
So we start with the Ghost crew in a junk heap.
Yep.
Essentially. They're sitting out waiting for
Who
a
knows who?
refueling. They have little to no info. All they know is Bail Organa wants him to be there.
Yep.
It was interesting they were watching HoloNet News,
Yep.
which becomes such a big part of not the HoloNet itself, not HoloNet News per se, but the broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Ezra broadcast across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And now we get Mon Mothma,
Yep.
and it kind of tips off the rest of the episode towards what we're going to see.
Yeah. Becomes pretty clear when they show her that she's going to be a main part of the episode.
Yeah. So, and if you had seen the preview, same thing.
Oh, I did not.
Well, and you don't like those kind of spoilers.
I don't like spoilers.
There you go. So it was kind of fun to see them put in a mystery situation / then dangerous when the probe droid shows up.
Yeah.
And as they dispatch the droid, now suddenly comes this mystery ship,
Yep.
accompanied by Gold Squadron,
Yeah.
which, much like I did in Rogue One, as I watched it for the first time and the second time and each
However many
subsequent time, I kind of sat up a little bit straighter
Uh-huh.
in my seat, and it's like, oh, I know them. I've
recognize
seen
them.
I've seen them before. So that was fun, and I think, then of course the Imperial ships show up as the droids seem to be communicating, and then we get a battle that ensues, or a skirmish, and Mon Mothma shows up herself,
Yep.
and that is the secret cargo.
Mm-hmm. Which was not a surprise.
No, not really.
I think it was supposed to be, but it wasn't really.
No. And it seemed like everybody knew.
Yeah.
Who maybe the Ghost crew
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit unsure,
Mm-hmm.
but the Imperials sure didn't.
Yeah.
So, number
They
2,
knew.
Thrawn gets it right again.
Yep. Always.
Always. Unquestionable.
Yep.
It continues to astound me, and I really wonder what's going on in his head as we kind of get to the end of the episode, but he predicts exactly what Hera's going to do.
Yep.
He sets up Price very well.
Yep.
He sends in this ship that the rebels are unfamiliar with, at least as far as fighting.
Yeah.
The Ghost crew has seen
The plans for it.
the
Yeah.
plans for it, so that they know what's coming. And Ezra tries to warn Gold Squadron.
Yeah.
It doesn't go so well.
Yeah.
And as they fly through the nebula, what's waiting for them on the other side? Governor Price and 2 Star Destroyers.
Yep.
And then we get... I found it a little disappointing as far as how easily they got away.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just number 3 that... Well, not... Number 3 is more of
The end.
the end of the episode. But for me, I understand the way they got away, that they set it up earlier in the episode with the proton torpedoes. Don't fire them in the nebula.
Yeah.
They're about to get caught. It didn't really feel like they were close to being caught.
Yeah. I was at no point thinking, oh, they're actually going to get caught and boarded. It felt like they were going to get free.
And I think that's where the crossover hurts the episode.
Because you know that she doesn't get captured or killed.
Well, we know she doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
And we know Hera doesn't get killed because we hear about
Yeah.
her later in Rogue One.
Yeah.
So I think, although I love the crossover in a lot of ways, it also reduces the suspense
Yeah.
that we might get in some of these episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'm never actually afraid for her life.
at least with those main characters.
Yeah.
With Callus, we have no context for him after
Yeah.
whatever the latest episode he shows up in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made Through Imperial Eyes such a strong episode.
Because we had no idea what was going to happen.
Exactly. Whereas when we see a Bail Organa or a Mon Mothma or a Lando Calrissian,
Yeah.
or a Leia Organa.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those characters that we're very familiar with, we know there may be some muddling of the story between where they're at and where they're going to be, but we know that they get to some point in the future.
Yeah.
So that's the one area I struggle with crossover between storylines, is that although it's momentous for the rebellion itself, and it's this launching of what looks to be a consolidated effort against the Empire, we know the result.
Exactly.
And that was kind of like Rogue One, and I think some people's hesitancy towards really giving it real weight within the Star Wars story, or being excited for it because we knew what the end was.
Yeah.
They steal the plans.
Yeah.
So the question is how they get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're getting in Star Wars Rebels. We know that the Alliance comes together. We know that there's rebel cells across the galaxy, and that eventually they make their move.
Yeah.
But we don't really know the story from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Or somewhere later in the alphabet, and we're getting B, C, D, E along the way. So we get to 3, and that bringing together Mon Mothma's call to the rest of the galaxy and those rebel cells, and obviously they had to have information to begin with of where Dantooine was and where the rallying point would be.
Yeah.
It's fun to hear about Dantooine because in several other points within the Star Wars story, again, that crossover, we hear about Dantooine and the rebel base that's established there.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to see a little bit of how that base develops and what really goes on there. I'll be curious to see if Chopper Base is still in existence in the future, if Phoenix Squadron's still going to find their base there, or this consolidating of the rebellion shifts everything to Dantooine.
I just thought of something that's a little bit unrelated, but would all the ships come out of hyperspace at the same place, like the same, and Dantooine's atmosphere?
Yeah.
How do they know how to place themselves so perfectly they don't run into each other?
Computers. Advanced artificial intelligence. I don't know.
I just thought of that. Like that's pretty impressive for like 100 ships to pop into space at the same place and not pop into the same spot.
Yeah, for the most part, we've seen them, and we're diverging quite a bit from
Sorry.
where you might be. We'll go down this rabbit hole for a little bit. I would think that the way we've seen large fleets leave one place and move to another, they're all leaving at the same time, so they're plotting their course based on
What's around them and
where they're at.
who they're going with.
And we don't know for sure that those ships weren't already together somewhere. It seems to insinuate
that they were everywhere. And
they were lots of different places.
Conglomerating.
But I don't know if that was a major point of emphasis as the writers and producers were putting the story together.
The exactitude of the science behind the jumping into life.
Well, and as we've seen in several different areas, the science of the Star Wars universe is a little bit different than the science of
that's true.
Ours.
Can get smudged a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the fun of science fiction.
That's true. The space opera versus the strict science fiction.
Yes. So, if you want some strict science fiction, maybe, well, not even that. I was going to say Star Trek seems to be a little bit more towards the strict end of the spectrum, but even then, lots of
impossibilities.
multiple timelines and those sort of things, which I guess could be possible. I would lean towards not, but I'm not an astrophysicist, so we'll leave that to more knowledgeable,
to those ones.
I suppose, and then I'll make my judgment based on their findings.
That's fair.
back to the story.
Okay.
Where do you really see things moving from here? Because Season 4 was just announced
Okay.
of Rebels, so we're getting at least one more season.
Okay. Not anything about it, just that it's gonna happen.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So I think we can spend a couple minutes kind of speculating based on what we're seeing right now. And timeline-wise, we may be able to... I'll be really curious to see where we get by the end of Season 4, especially if that's kind of the culmination of Rebels as a TV show. There's been a lot of speculation that it's going to be canceled, I guess, for lack of a better word, or ended based on the storyline and how much crossover there is between those.
Yeah.
Because I think we're starting to run into territory where there's going to be a lot of different... There's going to be a lot of opportunity for very familiar things to show up because we're starting to see a lot of that. So I would be willing to bet that we're not going to see a ton of it in the rest of this season. But I think Season 4, the momentum towards that crossover is really going to build up. And I would love to see, if it is going to be the last season of Star Wars Rebels, is to go all the way to the Battle of Scarif.
Okay.
That we see in Rogue One and those Easter eggs of...
Yeah.
We just see it from the Ghost Crew's perspective instead of kind of... Jyn Erso's perspective and Cassian. So
that'd be awesome.
That would be fun. And I'm just curious, because that seemed to be so much a part of this episode, how those stars align. and how far the story group and the producers and writers of Star Wars Rebels are willing to go to be able to kind of broach those stories together. Are they going to really bring those stories, tie them in to where... I really wonder what happened to the Ghost over Scarif.
Yeah, I really want to know, and I'm
a
little bit scared to know
what happens. I think in the novelization we get a little bit of more information on what happens after the plans.
Okay, are sent.
Yes, because we see bad things start to happen as Vader is boarding the Mon Calamari ship and the plans get away.
Yeah.
What happens just after that above Scarif? I don't know.
Yeah.
So Rebels could be an opportunity to explain that. And we could see Vader a little bit more and kind of go into depth of that storyline, which I think would be really fun. Final thoughts of Secret Cargo.
I liked the episode. It didn't feel very edge of your seat, but it was cool as far as how it affects the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing I came away with is I really have no idea how the Ghost Crew is going to beat Thrawn, because he's so ahead of them. Like, every step of the way, he understands them. So I'm excited and interested to see how the big showdown between Thrawn and the Rebels is gonna go. What it's gonna consist of, and how are they possibly gonna beat him when it comes to the end of his endgame.
Yeah. And I think that is a really big lingering question. And because he keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and just like I said earlier, I can't imagine what goes through his head when he sets people up just to do the job, and they somehow, some way screw it up.
Yep.
One of these times, he's just going to be like, okay, it's up to me to take care of this. Because although, and again, it goes back to him playing the super long game of, yes, it'd be great to get Mon Mothma, and that's a relative priority for the Empire, but he wants to know where everyone else is.
Yeah, he wants to find the rebel base.
So
Where everybody together is.
I can understand from a certain point of view that he almost doesn't want other people to be successful because it's going to thwart what he's trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Getting everyone together
Even though
so
it
he
may
can find them.
weaken the rebellion, it's not going to get everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my initial thought of him like banging his head on his desk or something. Just being like, can't they just do it?
Do something right.
But with him playing the long game, I get it.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you that overall the episode was fun because of the characters we saw, the meaning towards the larger story, but wasn't a heart-pounding thriller.
Yeah.
Wondering
Like
what's going
last
to
one
happen
was.
next. Yeah. So through Imperial Eyes, I think I've said this almost every other episode at least, but at least one of my favorite, if not my favorite of the season. Secret Cargo, kind of a bridge episode, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And coming up on the culmination of this season, I'm curious to see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And I think this episode does a good job of setting up multiple storylines across multiple I don't want to say it's not genres, mediums.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whether it's film, books,
Yeah.
comics, what have you.
Back to your question about what I want out of next season, or the culmination of Rebels. I want them to tie up all the loose storylines.
I'm sure they will.
There's so many.
They're not just going to fly off into
Hope not.
deep space and not exist.
And just leave it at that.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be some sort of culmination of storylines.
There better be.
Even if
What happened to Ahsoka?
she died.
No.
I think it's a lot of people's questions.
Yeah.
And it's vague and ambiguous, and I think that was intentional.
It's rude.
So rude. Dave Filoni. You should write him an email or something.
I should.
Just ask.
Give him my opinion.
All right, that wraps up this episode of Rebels Reaction. Be sure to check us out online at unmistakably.starwars.com. Our various podcasts that drop throughout the week. We're on Twitter at unmistakably.sw, facebook.com/unmistakably.starwars. This has been Rebels Reaction. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
Until next time, may the Force be with you.